Okay, we're reading A Course in Miracles and we're on chapter 14 now. We're starting chapter 14. This chapter is called Teaching for Truth, and there's a very short introduction. And then the first section we're going to read too, which is called The Conditions of Learning. Here we go. Introduction, Teaching for Truth, chapter 14. Yes, you are blessed indeed. Yet in this world you do not know it, but you have the means for learning it and seeing it quite clearly. The Holy Spirit uses logic as easily and as well as does the ego, except that his conclusions are not insane. They take a direction exactly opposite, pointing as clearly to heaven as the ego points to darkness and to death. We have followed much of the ego's logic and have seen its logical conclusions, and having seen them, we have realized that they cannot be seen except in illusions, for there alone their seeming clearness seems to be clearly seen. Let us now turn away from them and follow the simple logic by which the Holy Spirit teaches the simple conclusions that speak for truth and only truth. The conditions of learning. If you are blessed and do not know it, you need to learn it must be so. The knowledge is not taught, but its conditions must be acquired, for it is they that have been thrown away. You can learn to bless and cannot give what you have not. If then you offer blessing, it must have come first to yourself, and you must also have accepted it as yours, for how else could you give it away? That is why miracles offer you the testimony that you are blessed. If what you offer is complete forgiveness, you must have let guilt go, accepting the atonement for yourself and learning you are guiltless. How could you learn what has been done for you, unknown to you, unless you do what you would have to do if it had been done for you? Indirect proof of truth is needed in a world made of denial and without direction. You will perceive the need for this if you realize that to deny is the decision not to know. The logic of the world must therefore lead to nothing, for its goal is nothing. If you decide to have and give and be nothing except a dream, you must direct your thoughts unto oblivion. And if you have and give and are everything, and all this has been denied, your thought system is closed off and wholly separated from the truth. This is an insane world, and do not underestimate the extent of its insanity. There is no area of your perception that it has not touched, and your dream is sacred to you. That is why God placed the Holy Spirit in you where you placed the dream. Seeing is always outward. Were your thoughts wholly of you, the thought system you made would be forever dark. The thoughts the mind of God's Son projects or extends have all the power that he gives to them. The thoughts he shares with God are beyond his belief, but those he made are his beliefs. And it is these and not the truth that he has chosen to defend and love. They will not be taken from him, but they can be given up by him, for the source of their undoing is in him. There is nothing in the world to teach him that the logic of the world is totally insane and leads to nothing. Yet in him who made this insane logic, there is one who knows it leads to nothing, for he knows everything. Any direction that would lead you where the Holy Spirit leads you not goes nowhere. Anything you deny that he knows to be true, you have denied yourself, and he must therefore teach you not to deny it. Undoing is indirect, as doing is. You were created only to create, neither to see nor do. These are but indirect expressions of the will to live, which has been blocked by the capricious and unholy whim of death and murder that your Father does not share with you. You have set yourself the task of sharing what cannot be shared. And while you think it possible to learn to do this, you will not believe all that is possible to learn to do. The Holy Spirit, therefore, must begin his teaching by showing you what you can never learn. His message is not indirect, but he must introduce the simple truth into a thought system which has become so twisted and so complex you cannot see that it means nothing. He merely looks at its foundation and dismisses it. But you who cannot undo what you have made, nor escape the heavy burden of its dullness that lies upon your mind, cannot see through it. It deceives you because you chose to deceive yourself. Those who choose to be deceived will merely attack direct approaches because they seem to encroach upon deception and strike at it. Okay, that's the end of that section. That section is called The Conditions of Learning. I also read the introduction. Jesus is harping on a few things here that are important. Remember that the last chapter was all about guilt, the guiltless world. As I understand it, when the Course was originally came through Helen, there wasn't the divisions of chapters. There wasn't even punctuation, actually. There wasn't the chapter headings. There weren't all these divisions into these different sections that came later, and that was partly with the help of Dr. Kenneth Wapnick. In the process, he was brought on by Bill and Helen to help, and he helped with that part of it. But originally, everything was just, a flow of words, basically. and Helen wrote it all down shorthand in her notebooks. And then she dictated it to Bill, who typed it out on a typewriter. And then it went through various revisions over the years. I'm not going to go into all that right now, but I just wanted to mention that. And keep in mind that this was originally for Helen and Bill, to help them with their special relationship that they had, where they could not get along with each other, and they could, for the life of them, could not get along with the people in the department at Columbia University. So they were so the Course ostensibly at first just came for Helen and Bill to show them another way, a better way to deal with each other in their relationship, and to learn to be at peace with themselves and with each other. And then they realized that the Course is really for everyone. The Course is really, came originally just for them, apparently, but then they realized this is for everyone. And it took years to reach the form that it's in here. Again, this is a whole long story, but I just wanted to give that background for anyone that might be listening that wants a little bit more background in all of this. 65 to 76. It was published in 76. Started in 65. This is A Course in Miracles. Please take notes. That was what first came through Helen. Helen was an avid reader and thinker, a very scholarly woman, very precise and very logical. And so the Course is like a university course that also is like a course in logic. It's like you're in a philosophy class here. It's not a theology class. Jesus doesn't want you to get caught up in theology. But it is, in some ways, the Course is very philosophically oriented, and it uses this logical approach, and it says the ego has its own logic. This is what Jesus is saying at the introduction. The ego's thought system, the ego has its own thought system. It's a thought system based in separation. It's a thought system based in the idea that it's possible and desirable to be separate from God. The Holy Spirit's thought system is that separation is the atonement, which is the thought system based in the idea that separation from God is impossible and never happened, never could happen. And it's not what we want. It's not what we truly want, because it's not what we truly are. And the Holy Spirit's logic is just as brilliant as the ego's. The only difference between the two, the ego is very brilliant. That great line early on says, the ego's thought system is foolproof, but not God-proof. So the ego is extremely consistent and let's say consistent in its logic, but its thought system is insane. and the Holy Spirit's thought system is wholly sane. Now, Jesus is here saying that there's certain conditions, and Jesus has said this before, there's certain conditions we need to fulfill in order to return our minds to sanity. And the simple and direct approach would be just to say, you know, this is not your reality. You're not here. You're not where you think you are. This world is a vast illusion. Time and space are not real. There's only the oneness, and any time that you feel separate or act upon that separation, you are reinforcing this insanity of the ego. This is why the Course, this is such a tough pill to swallow, and Jesus is saying we got to take an indirect approach, because it's like when you try to tell someone, you try to reason with someone who, and you think this is a tough thing because everyone has their own bias, but you can kind of tell, when someone is really not being reasonable. They're just not open to a new idea, right? So you can't really say much to them, and if you try to say something to them, they will get angry. That's when you know that they're deep in their bias. They're deep in their ego investment. If they can't even listen to you and they can't even consider calmly what you're saying to them. And that doesn't mean that you need to attack them or to write them off or anything like that. That's just to say, you can just calmly observe that this person is just not ready to hear what you have to say. And maybe they're not ready to look at something, right? And we all do that, but there's different, there's a whole spectrum of that. Some people are just not at all open. You try to say something to them and they will get angry at you and attack you, right? Let's read this last paragraph, okay? The Holy Spirit must begin his teaching by showing you what you can never learn. His message is not indirect, but he must introduce the simple truth into a thought system which has become so twisted and so complex, you cannot see that it means nothing. Okay, so let's just talk about that for a second. First of all, he must begin his teaching. The Holy Spirit must begin his teaching by showing you what you could never learn. We're so caught up in the ego. There's no way that we can do what the Holy Spirit, except through grace. But, we are so conditioned according to the ego's thought system that what the Holy Spirit is and represents is like completely foreign to us. And it does not make any sense from where we are. So his message is not indirect. The message of the atonement is very simple and is very direct. Only God is real. The ego is nothing. Its whole thought system and everything based in it is nothing. It does not exist. We do not exist as separate individual entities. That's an illusion. Now, do we really believe that? Do we really believe, and let's just say believe. Do we really believe that? We might say we do, or we might say, yeah, Einstein back there. Yeah, Einstein said the same thing, right? Yeah, it sounds right. I'm a mystic. I can accept that, right? I think that's true. But in reality, it's one thing to know something like that through words or intellectually speaking, and it's a whole nother thing to live by it and to use it as a practice to transform your consciousness until you perceive in the way, or as close to the way the Holy Spirit perceives things, which is wholly without judgment and not making separation real and not making the illusion real, the illusion of the ego real in your mind. So for the Holy Spirit, it's very simple and it's very direct. But because we are so conditioned according to the ego, we are like that person that cannot listen, right? We get upset and we get angry when these things are brought to our attention. And so we must learn these things gradually and indirectly. And that's why this course takes at least a year. It's actually a lifetime process and practice. So Holy Spirit merely looks at its foundation and dismisses it. It just says separation is no. Idea of separation, it is not. It's laughable. It was never true, can never be true, will never be true. Just don't even go there. Nip it in the bud. That's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit just says, nope. It's like that movie. Nope. But you who cannot undo what you have made, nor escape the heavy burden of its dullness that lies upon your mind, cannot see through it. It deceives you because you chose to deceive yourself. So we're in denial, and we are. What does Jesus say here? Indirect proof of truth is needed in a world made of denial and without direction. You will perceive the need for this if you realize that to deny is the decision not to know. So we are actually, when we see separation, or let's say think and act upon the ego, we've made a choice. We don't realize it, but we've chose to deny the truth and not know the truth. We've made that decision. Jesus is bringing that to our attention, and he says somewhere in here that that we cannot really see this without the help of someone else. You need someone like Jesus to come and show you this, explain this to you. I think Ken Wapnick had he basically put a box around the ego thought system and said, you could just put a box around it and say, this is not real. This whole thought system and everything that comes from the thought system, including the world, is not real. Let's read this one passage because this is interesting. If you have and give and are everything, and all this has been denied, your thought system is closed off and wholly separated from the truth. This is an insane world, and do not underestimate the extent of its insanity. There is no area of your perception that it has not touched, and your dream is sacred to you. That is why God placed the Holy Spirit in you where you placed the dream. Now, is when Jesus says this is an insane world, does he mean the world that we're in, created, is the ego's doing, made by the ego? Or is he just saying that this is an insane world, that when our thought system is closed off as it is that the world that's insane? It's not exactly clear from this. But Jesus has said something like this before, which is that don't underestimate the ego and the power of the illusion. Do not underestimate. The ego is very, 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 very consistent and very, very appealing and very, very um, you know, powerful because our minds are so powerful, and the ego is part of our mind. So don't underestimate the power of that. Also, do not underestimate the insanity of it. And don't underestimate how pervasive it is. The ego is basically everything in this world witnesses to the reality of the ego and the unreality of God. Everything. This is why this course, if you really think about what it's doing, it's someone from outside of that box of the ego's thought system coming out from outside of the box and saying, nope, this is not real. Who can say that except the one who has transcended it, the one who has realized that, like fully realized that? There are some, I would say, including myself, who have had glimpses, but to fully realize that and be able to present a course like this is just mind-blowing. If it's true, there's still that part of us that is like, this all sounds possible, but is it really true? I remember Helen saying, I know it's all true, I just don't believe it. Why? Because the ego. So that's all I'm going to say for right now, because there's too much to say. But we're going to keep going in this chapter 14, the happy learner. Next section, we'll see you. See you happy learners soon. Thanks.